So your histology will be like your last one, will be, I don't know, I gotta look at the numbers, I can't remember, like, few microscopes set up, and then you have multiple choice options for the histology stuff. Okay, so this is the spermatic cord. And this is at the low magnification. And what we want to find on here is one really large cross section of a single ductus deferens. And it may or may not have sperm in it. And then a bunch of smaller cross sections of arteries and veins that may or may not have blood in them. And we're not going to worry about the nerves, but those are the three things I want you to be able to identify. Ductus deferens, artery, vein, and then know this is the slide of the spermatic cord. So let's look at the ductus deferens first. That's what this guy is right here. So it goes from here. This is the lumen. There's some sperm in here. That's what these things are in here. Those are sperm cells. And it goes to probably about right there. So that's your ductus deferens. It's going to be big, and it's going to be round, okay? Now, your arteries are also going to be round, and relative to a vein, the arteries will have more smooth muscle in their wall than a vein will. But between an artery and the ductus deferens is going to be way bigger than an artery, and the layer of smooth muscle in the ductus deferens, so this, is going to be much thicker than in an artery. The other way you're going to be able to tell that this is the ductus deferens is you're going to be able to see, even though you can't see the cells well because we're not magnified enough, you can see that this in here, that's your epithelia right there. Okay, all this dark staining right there, that's your epithelia that's lining the lumen. For your arteries and veins, the kind of epithelia that lines the lumen of your artery and veins is simple squamous epithelia. Okay, so that's for your blood vessels. And though you can't see individual cells, you can tell just by the fact that you can see that it's a thickness to it, that is not this. This is a single layer of the thinnest cells that you could possibly have. That would be this. That, what you're looking at for your ductus deferens, that's going to be, ooh, what is that? It's either, I'll double check, it's either simple columnar or it's pseudostratified. I always forget. It's one of the two. Pseudostratified columnar. It's one of the two. And again, I'll double check here in just a minute. But it's definitely not this, okay? Because again, it's just, you can tell the cells aren't that skinny. Here, the cells are columns. And they're like this. Or something like that, okay? So this is the ductus deferens. If I put the pointer on this, I'd either put it here or I could put it in the lumen, anywhere on this. You tell me that's the ductus deferens, okay? Now, let's look at an artery so you can compare the two. And we'll look at a vein also. Okay, so again, there's only one of those in there. Come over here. Yeah, this is a good section here. Okay, so what we get here, this is an artery. That's an artery. So you can see that it's round also. And it has a fair amount of smooth muscle, but definitely nowhere near what we just saw. And when you look in here at the epithelia, you can see that there's a darkness in here, but it's real thin. It's just a thin layer right here. And that's because that's simple squamous epithelia there. It would be really hard, it's just hard to see because cells are so small, so short. And then over here, this is a vein. So veins are going to have an oblong or kind of an elliptical shape. And it's because when you cross-section them, they collapse on themselves because they just don't have very much muscle in the wall. Here's the muscle in the wall of the vein. So the overall diameter of a vein is going to be bigger than the overall diameter of an artery. The amount of smooth muscle in the wall of a vein is less than the amount of smooth muscle in an artery. But again, if you look in here, this is also simple squamous epithelium. Even though you can't see the individual cells, you can tell that it's just a very thin layer of cells. It's just not staining very dark because there's not a lot of thickness to the cells. So if I pointed to this, you would tell me that's a vein. If I pointed to that, you'd tell me that's an artery. You'd tell me this whole thing is a slide of the spermatic cord. So let me point something out to you and then you tell me what it is. And I think for this one, I think I'm gonna have to keep it at 4x. If I go any higher, you're not gonna be able to see anything else around it. You won't have a point of reference at all. Okay, so if I were to, point to this, what would you tell me this is?
An artery?
That's an artery. This just happens to have red blood cells in the middle of it, okay? That's an artery, and you know it's an artery because it's round. It's not as big as that ductus deferens that we saw. It's got a decent amount of smooth muscle, but not nearly like the ductus deferens. What's this right here?
A vein?
That's a vein. And then what's this?
The ductus deferens.
Ductus deferens, okay? And the whole thing is a slide of the spermatic cord. Okay, good, all right. All right, let's look at the testes next. Okay, so for the testes, what you're gonna look at is cross-sections of seminiferous tubules. And in the wall of the seminiferous tubule, you're not gonna see epithelia. Instead, you're gonna see cells that are not in nice little layers, cells kind of all over the place in different stages of cell division. Now, you're not gonna have to tell me what kind of cell you're looking at. You don't need to tell me if it's undergoing mitosis or meiosis, but you should be able to tell that it's not a pretty layer of epithelial cells and that they're cells undergoing cell division. I'll show you how to tell that. You're not gonna see any microvilli on the apical surface like you would in the epididymus. Okay, so this is at 4x and it's way too low of a magnification to really see much, but what you can see are cross-section of tubules. So this is a cross-section of a seminiferous tubule. That's a cross-section of seminiferous tubule, seminiferous tubule, seminiferous tubule, so on and so forth. And then, let's see. Again, it's a little bit hard to see at this magnification, but if this is a seminiferous tubule here, and that's a seminiferous tubule here, then these cells here that are around them, those would be interstitial cells. So those would be interstitial cells. Those are the ones that make testosterone. And then you should know for this histology stuff, if I say, what's the function of this, you would say that's where we make sperm. So you make sperm in these guys, and then the cells that are around it, that's where you make testosterone. So let's magnify this and look at one of these tubules at a higher magnification. So I'm gonna go to 10x. And find a good one here. Lots of good ones. Okay, so we're gonna take it up one more. But again, that would be your seminiferous tubule, seminiferous tubule, seminiferous tubule, interstitial cells. Make testosterone, make sperm. And again, we're gonna magnify it so we can see that even better. I'm gonna take it up to 40x. Okay, so when cells are undergoing mitosis or meiosis, they lose the nuclear envelope, okay? And that's so that the chromosomes that are inside can condense and then get moved around within the cell. Whereas if you're looking at the epididymus, you're gonna see a nice layer of epithelial cells with microvilli on the apical surface. This would be the lumen up here. And you're gonna see a nice defined nucleus. It's gonna be nice and purple. You're not gonna see anything in it. Right, it'll be like that, okay? And it'll line up really nicely. Whereas here, when you look in these cells, you don't have a nice defined nucleus, but what you do see is you see kind of like all this gritty stuff in here. And those are your condensed chromosomes. All that like little gritty, let me try to see it better, like here's a good one. You don't see just a nice purple nucleus. You see like all this kind of, looks like little spaghetti or little strings. Here's another good one right here. Those are chromosomes. And again, the other thing that you're seeing is they're not in just this one single nice layer. You just got cells all over the place. So cells, 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 cells. They're just all over. So that's how, when I look at that, I say, oh, that's gotta be the testy. It's gotta be the seminiferous tubule. I get cells in all different stages of cell division. What you're seeing out here, kind of this stringy stuff that you're seeing, those are sperm tails that are hanging out in the lumen. What you can't see because they're too small is their head's still in there attached. Okay, so you can't really see the heads, but if this stringy stuff, don't confuse that with microvilli. You'll see microvilli here is very different looking. Those are just sperm tails that are hanging out there. Again, you can see these interstitial cells pretty nicely. Those are interstitial cells, so what you need to know for your test, I would have this magnification. If I point there, you're gonna tell me interstitial cells or cells of Leydig. Again, it'll be multiple choice. Those make testosterone. This right here is a seminiferous tubule. In the wall here, you make sperm cells, okay? This is a slide of the testes. That's what you should know, okay? Take it away. Okay, then we're gonna put up the epididymis. So this is at 4x, and again, it's a little bit hard to really see, but what you can definitely see are cross-section of tubules. So that's a tubule, that's a tubule, tubules, tubules, okay? So you can definitely see tubules. And then, even at this magnification, what you can see is that the cells in these tubules are staining much darker than the cells that we saw in the testes. And that's because these guys have a nice nucleus that's gonna pick up the stain. Nuclei pick up the stain really well. And you can see that they're all kind of lining up together. Like if you look at the real dark purple stuff, it's kind of all lining up, which is telling me that's a single layer of some kind of epithelial cell. And since I can see what looks like the rest of the cell kind of hanging up like this, chances are that it's either simple columnar or pseudostratified columnar. Even at this magnification, I can see that. So I'm gonna, here's another good one down here. So this part that's lighter, that's just the cytoplasm that's staining, and then the purple is the nucleus that stains really dark. And again, it kind of looks like one layer going around. So we'll magnify this like we did the testing. We'll take it up to 40x. So first to 10x. And again, now you can actually start to see the nuclei in there. And the other thing that you can see is there's just a whole lot more cells out here around these tubules. And you just didn't see that many cells around the seminiferous tubule because you just don't have that many interstitial cells out there around the tubule. But if we take this up to 40x, now we can very clearly see we've got purple nuclei, right? Nice, solid stained purple nucleus. Nice, solid stained purple nucleus. Nice purple nuclei. And again, lots of purple nuclei. They're not all in one perfect layer because this is pseudostratified columnar epithelia. So they're not perfect, lined up like this because they don't quite look like that. They're more like kind of more like that, okay? But it's still a single layer of cells that are columns. So this is pseudostratified columnar epithelia. And then out here you can see these nice microvilli out here. Really long microvilli out here. Now, this epididymis happens to have some sperm cells in it. You may or may not have sperm cells, so definitely don't use that as anything to help you identify. But this, very clearly, you see purple nuclei. You definitely don't see cells in different stages of cell division. Cells are lining up more. You definitely see a nice part of your cytoplasm of these columnar cells, and you've got your microvilli. So on your test, if I pointed here, you would just tell me that's a tubule of the epididymis. If I pointed here, you tell me that's microvilli or stereocilia, same thing. This is a slide of the epididymis, and then if I say, what's the function of this structure? You'd say this is where sperm are stored, so stored. They can be recycled if they're damaged, but that would be the job here. Okay, and that's it. All right, questions? Okay, we'll do the 3 females. Female slides on Wednesday. They're even easier than these. We're gonna do the ovary, the vagina, and the uterus, and they're all very straightforward slides. Okay, so histology on this one's pretty easy.